Have you ever felt a shiver down your spine when standing in an ancient forest, as if the trees themselves were whispering secrets from another time? Or caught yourself staring at the stars, wondering if the constellations might hide stories older than civilization itself? Across every culture, in every corner of the world, humanity has been spellbound by myths, those shimmering bridges between our ordinary lives and realms where magic feels palpably real. These aren't just old tales gathering dust in forgotten scrolls. They're living, breathing echoes of the human soul, where gods walk among mortals, where heroes battle forces beyond comprehension, and where the boundaries between reality and the impossible blur into legend. Today, we're stepping through that shimmering veil. Picture this: 35 ancient myths from magical realms, each one a key to understanding how our ancestors made sense of the universe's mysteries. From the celestial battles of Norse mythology to the dreamlike wisdom of indigenous storytellers, these narratives don't just entertain, they reveal the deepest fears, hopes, and dreams of the people who first told them. What if I told you that buried within these stories are clues to lost civilizations, fragments of forgotten wisdom, and even startling parallels to our modern lives? This isn't just a tour through dusty old legends. It's an expedition into the heart of human imagination. Think of it as unlocking a series of enchanted doors, each myth a portal to a world where the rules bend, where love defies death, and where courage faces the unimaginable. And here's the most thrilling part: these stories aren't relics of the past. They're alive, shaping our movies, our books, even the way we see ourselves. So, if you've ever wondered why certain myths haunt us across centuries, or how a story whispered around a fire 3,000 years ago could still give you chills today, you're about to find out. Ready to begin? The first door is already opening: the lost city of Atlantis. Just the name conjures images of crystalline spires swallowed by the sea, a civilization so advanced it vanished without a trace, leaving only whispers in the tides. But where did this legend begin? Our story starts not with an explorer's map, but with the philosopher Plato, who first described Atlantis around 360 BCE in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. He painted it as a powerful island kingdom, a utopia of towering temples and canals, ruled by descendants of the sea god Poseidon. Its people mastered engineering, agriculture, even energy sources we might call futuristic today. But their pride became their downfall. According to Plato, the gods punished Atlantis for its arrogance, sinking it beneath the waves in a single cataclysmic day and night. Now, here's where the mystery deepens. Plato insisted Atlantis was real, a story passed down from Egyptian priests, but was it history or a cautionary tale about hubris? Scholars have debated this for centuries. Some argue Atlantis was pure allegory, a literary device to warn against tyranny. Others point to tantalizing clues: Plato's precise descriptions of its location, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, modern-day Gibraltar, and its destruction around 9,000 years before his time. Could he have been recording a distorted memory of a real catastrophe? The hunt for Atlantis has spiraled into one of history's greatest obsessions. Explorers have proposed locations from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, even Antarctica. One compelling theory ties Atlantis to the Minoan civilization on Santorini, obliterated by a volcanic eruption around 1600 BCE. The explosion was so violent it reshaped the island and spawned tsunamis, echoing Plato's account of a violent earthquake and flood. Then there's the Richat structure in Mauritania, a giant bullseye in the Sahara that matches Plato's description of concentric rings. And let's not ignore the wilder theories: underwater megaliths near Cuba, or the claim that Atlantis was an alien colony. Modern technology has only fueled the fire. Sonar scans and satellite imagery reveal sunken cities off India's coast and beneath the Baltic Sea, each hailed as proof by true believers. Even mainstream archaeologists admit Earth's coastlines have changed dramatically since the last ice age. Could a sophisticated society have been lost when seas rose? The deeper we dig, the more Atlantis feels like a mirror. Maybe it's not just about finding a city, but understanding why we need to believe in it. A golden age swallowed by the sea reminds us of our fragility and our endless hunger for rediscovery. The Garden of Eden, more than just a paradise lost, it's a story that has seeped into the very fabric of human longing. We all know the biblical version, a lush sanctuary where the first man and woman lived in harmony until a serpent's whisper and a forbidden fruit shattered their innocence. But peel back the layers and you'll find Eden's roots tangled in far older soil. Long before the book of Genesis, Mesopotamian myth spoke of Dilmun, a pristine land of immortality where sickness and death were unknown. Sound familiar? The parallels are striking. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, written over 4,000 years ago, the hero seeks a sacred garden where a divine woman tends the tree of life, a tale echoing Eden's themes of knowledge, temptation, and fall from grace. So where does myth end and history begin? Scholars have scoured ancient texts and maps for clues. The Bible places Eden at the confluence of 4 rivers, 2 of which, the Tigris and Euphrates, anchor Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. But the other 2, the Pishon and Gihon, remain mysteries. Some theorize they're long-lost waterways buried by shifting landscapes. Others point to the Persian Gulf, which was dry land during the last ice age, suggesting Eden may now lie submerged, much like Atlantis. There's even a bold claim linking Eden to the Nile Delta, where early agriculture flourished, tying the garden to humanity's leap from hunter-gatherers to settlers. Yet Eden isn't just about geography, it's a mirror for our deepest questions. Why do we yearn for a perfect beginning? Why does every culture have a story of paradise lost? The symbolism runs deep. The serpent, often vilified, appears in myths worldwide as a trickster and a wisdom bringer. The forbidden fruit, some scholars argue it represents the painful dawn of self-awareness, the moment humans grasped morality and mortality. Even the cherubim guarding Eden's gates with flaming swords find echoes in Babylonian guardian spirits called Lamashu. What's fascinating is how Eden's essence resurfaces in unexpected places. The ancient Greeks had the gardens of the Hesperides, where golden apples granted immortality. Hindu texts describe Svarga, a heavenly realm of eternal bliss. And indigenous Amazonian myths speak of a primordial garden where the first humans lived without suffering. These recurring motifs suggest Eden isn't just one story. It's a universal human dream, a collective memory of a time before hardship. Modern science adds another layer. The concept of a golden age aligns with archaeological evidence of early human societies that thrived before climate shifts or resource conflicts. Could Eden be a distant echo of Neolithic villages where life was simpler, or a metaphor for our transition into complex civilizations with all their burdens? The garden's legacy endures, from Renaissance art to dystopian novels wrestling with the cost of knowledge. It challenges us to ask, is paradise something we lost or something we're still trying to build? El Dorado, the name alone, sparks visions of a city paved with gold, where treasure drips from every temple and even the rivers glitter with untold riches. But the truth behind this legendary kingdom is far more fascinating than any fairy tale. It begins not with a place, but with a person. Long before Spanish conquistadors scoured the jungles of South America, the Muisca people of modern-day Colombia practiced a breathtaking ritual. When a new leader rose to power, he would be coated in gold dust, transforming him into a living idol, El Dorado, the Golden One. Then, aboard a raft laden with emeralds and golden offerings, he'd plunge into the sacred waters of Lake Guatavita, a sacrifice to the gods. This ceremony wasn't just about wealth, it was a bridge between earth and the divine. When Spanish explorers heard whispers of this ritual, their greed twisted the story. By the 1500s, El Dorado had morphed in their imaginations from a man into a city, a mythical kingdom where gold was as common as sand. expeditions tore through the Andes and Amazon, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. Men like Gonzalo Pizarro and Sir Walter Raleigh risked everything, driven by tales of golden palaces and trees with leaves of hammered metal, but the jungle guarded its secrets. Many died of disease, starvation, or in clashes with indigenous tribes who saw these invaders as anything but heroic. What makes El Dorado so enduring isn't just the treasure hunt, it's what the legend reveals about human nature. For conquerors, it symbolized insatiable greed. For the Muisca and other indigenous peoples, it was a sacred tradition, a reminder that gold belonged to the gods, not men. Modern archaeology adds another layer to the mystery. Recent discoveries in Colombia's highlands, like the stunning golden artifacts in the Museo del Oro, prove the Muisca's metalworking mastery. Satellite imaging has even revealed vast circular earthworks in the Amazon, possible remnants of a sophisticated civilization. Could these be echoes of the city conquistadors dreamed of? El Dorado's legacy stretches far beyond history books. It's a metaphor for our own relentless pursuits, whether wealth, fame, or happiness always just out of reach. From Hollywood blockbusters to video games, the myth endures because it asks a haunting question. What happens when the thing we seek most becomes the thing that destroys us? The real treasure of El Dorado might not be gold at all, but the wisdom to know when to stop searching. Avalon rises from the mists of Arthurian legend like an island out of time, a place where swords are forged in dragon's breath, where wounded kings are carried to heal, and where the veil between worlds grows thin. Unlike the gold lust of El Dorado or the paradise of Eden, Avalon is a realm of paradoxes, both a sanctuary and a threshold, a physical location whispered to exist in Somerset's Glastonbury, and a Celtic otherworld beyond mortal reach. Its name, derived from the Welsh word afal, meaning apple, hints at its magic. In Celtic lore, apples symbolized immortality, and Avalon's orchards were said to bear fruit that could grant eternal youth. This wasn't just a fairy tale. The island's roots dig deep into pre-Christian beliefs, where it served as one of the many gateways to Anon, the Welsh underworld, a land of perpetual feasts and ageless heroes. The most famous thread of Avalon's story ties it to King Arthur. After his final battle at Camlan, mortally wounded and betrayed, Arthur's knights ferry him to Avalon's shores. Some versions say he sleeps there, waiting to return in Britain's darkest hour. Others claim he died and was buried at Glastonbury Abbey, where monks in the 12th century famously discovered his grave, a shrewd move to attract pilgrims during a financial crisis. But Glastonbury's connection to Avalon isn't purely political. The area's watery landscape, with its tidal marshes and the mysterious Glastonbury Tor rising like a spiral staircase to the sky, mirrors ancient descriptions of the isle surrounded by mist and flood. Even the Tor's terraces are said to mimic the spiral paths of Celtic otherworldly fortresses. Modern seekers still flock to Glastonbury, not for gold or apples, but for something more elusive, the lingering magic of the land. Every year, thousands walk the labyrinthine path up the Tor, meditate in the Chalice Well gardens where iron-rich waters run red like blood, or leave offerings at the Glastonbury Thorn, a descendant of the legendary hawthorn tree said to bloom at Christmas. These pilgrims aren't just tourists, they're part of a tradition stretching back millennia, blending Arthurian romance, Celtic spirituality, and New Age mysticism. Archaeologists have found Iron Age artifacts in the area, suggesting Glastonbury was a sacred site long before Arthur's name was ever spoken. Avalon's true power lies in its ambiguity. Is it a real place, a metaphor for transcendence, or a memory of druidic rites lost to time? The island's legacy endures because it answers a hunger not for treasure but for mystery. In a world mapped by satellites, Avalon remains deliciously untamed, a reminder that some doors in the imagination never fully close. Whether you see it as Arthur's resting place or a symbol of the soul's journey, one thing is certain: the mists of Avalon still call to those willing to listen. High in the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas, where the air grows thin and the mountains seem to touch the heavens, lies a legend of a paradise untouched by time, Shangri-La. James Hilton immortalized this hidden valley in his 1933 novel Lost Horizon, painting it as a sanctuary of eternal youth and wisdom, sheltered from the chaos of the outside world. But Hilton's vision was just the tip of the iceberg. Long before his pen touched paper, Tibetan Buddhists spoke of Shambhala, a mystical kingdom concealed somewhere in the vastness of Central Asia. Unlike Shangri-La's tranquil retreat, Shambhala was a warrior's paradise, a place where enlightened beings prepared for a final battle against darkness, ensuring the world's spiritual survival. The contrast between these two versions reveals something profound about how myths evolve. Hilton's Shangri-La, with its ageless lamas and library of ancient knowledge, reflected Western fantasies of escape, a peaceful refuge from war and industrialization. Tibetan tradition, however, framed Shambhala as a dynamic force, a spiritual fortress where enlightenment and action merged. Both versions share a core truth: the human longing for a place beyond suffering where harmony reigns supreme. Real-world searches for these hidden realms have fueled expeditions for centuries. In the late 1800s, Russian mystic Nicholas Roerich trekked through the Himalayas, convinced Shambhala lay in the Altai Mountains. Nazi occultists bizarrely sought it too, hoping its mythical power could turn the tide of World War II. Modern scholars point to the Hunza Valley in Pakistan, where longevity and breathtaking landscapes mirror Hilton's descriptions. Others argue the kingdom is purely symbolic, a metaphor for inner peace attainable through meditation. Yet the physical landscape keeps the mystery alive. Remote monasteries like Tibet's Jong'anj are said to appear only to the pure of heart, vanishing when sought by the unworthy. Technology hasn't dispelled the legend, it's added new layers. Satellite images reveal hidden valleys in Bhutan, their lush greenery isolated by impassable cliffs. Climate scientists note how melting glaciers expose ancient paths once thought mythical. Even the Dalai Lama has weighed in, calling Shambhala a pure land, existing both geographically and spiritually. Whether a place or a state of mind, the pull of Shangri-La endures because it answers a universal hunger. In a fractured world, who wouldn't dream of a hidden valley where time stands still and the air hums with the promise of something greater? The Himalayas guard their secrets well, but perhaps the real magic lies in the search itself, the belief that somewhere beyond the next ridge paradise still waits. The hanging gardens of Babylon dangle in our imaginations like a mirage, lush terraces rising above the desert, an oasis engineered by human hands so magnificent they earned a spot among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But here's the twist: after centuries of fascination, historians still can't agree if they ever existed at all. Unlike the pyramids of Giza or the Colossus of Rhodes, the gardens leave no physical trace. No crumbling walls, no scattered seeds, just tantalizing whispers in ancient texts and a mystery that refuses to wilt. Our primary source is the Greek historian Berossus, writing in the 3rd century BCE, who claimed King Nebuchadnezzar II built the gardens to soothe his homesick Median wife, Queen Amytis. She missed the green mountains of her homeland, so he recreated them with tiered gardens soaring over Babylon's flat plains. Later writers like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus embellished the tale, describing intricate aqueducts and screws lifting water from the Euphrates to nourish trees whose roots hung in midair, hence the name. But here's the catch: not a single Babylonian record mentions these gardens. No royal inscriptions, no administrative tablets detailing their upkeep. It's as if the wonder was invisible to the people who supposedly maintained it. This absence has led to fiery debates. One faction insists the gardens were pure Greek propaganda, a romanticized export to marvel at while forgetting Babylon's real achievements like its ziggurats and law codes. Others propose a case of mistaken identity. Assyrian texts from Nineveh, written a century earlier, describe King Sennacherib's palace without rival. complete with terraced gardens irrigated by an elaborate system of canals and bronze screws. Could later chroniclers have conflated two empires? Modern excavations at Nineveh reveal remnants of aqueducts and lush garden imagery fueling this theory. Then there's the engineering puzzle. Babylon's arid climate and limited rainfall make the garden seem impossible unless the ancients mastered hydroponics centuries ahead of their time. Some scholars suggest the hanging gardens weren't suspended at all, but tiered like a ziggurat with plants cascading down stepped platforms. A recently deciphered cuneiform tablet even hints at a massive arched structure that might have supported such a design. But without definitive ruins, the gardens remain as elusive as a desert phantom. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between history and metaphor. The image of a king bending nature to his will reflects Babylon's pride in its hydraulic innovations, like the canals that transformed Mesopotamia into a breadbasket. Or maybe the gardens symbolize something deeper: humanity's eternal struggle to carve beauty from harshness, to root gardens in the sky when the earth refuses to yield. The mystery endures because it asks us to consider how legends are born. Sometimes the most enduring wonders aren't made of stone and soil, but of the stories we refuse to let die. Far beyond the cold winds of the north, where the sun never sets even at midnight, the ancient Greeks whispered of a land untouched by sorrow or age. Hyperborea. Unlike the mist-laden isles of Celtic myth or the jungle-hidden cities of El Dorado, this Arctic paradise was said to bask in perpetual golden light, its people living for 1,000 years in perfect harmony. The name itself means beyond the north wind, a realm so blissful that storms, disease, and even old age dared not cross its borders. At the heart of this legend stood Apollo, the sun god, who was believed to winter among the Hyperboreans in a chariot of light, returning to Greece each spring with renewed vigor. His connection to this distant utopia wasn't just poetic. It hinted at a deeper, almost forgotten bond between Mediterranean civilizations and the mysteries of the Arctic. The earliest accounts come from Herodotus, who wrote of Hyperborean pilgrims delivering sacred offerings wrapped in wheat straw to Apollo's temple on Delos. These offerings traveled through a chain of intermediaries, as if ordinary humans couldn't endure the journey to the land itself. Pindar, the lyric poet, described Hyperborea as a place where music floated on the air and feasts never ended, a stark contrast to Greece's warring city-states. Even the mythological hero Perseus was said to have visited, wielding a Hyperborean sickle gifted by the gods. But what's fascinating isn't just the idyllic imagery, it's the possible grains of truth buried beneath the myth. Ancient trade maps reveal amber routes stretching from the Baltic to the Aegean, suggesting real contact between northern cultures and the classical world. Could Hyperborea have been a distorted memory of Scandinavia's midnight sun, or the advanced seafaring societies of the Arctic Circle? Yet this serene vision was grotesquely twisted in the 20th century, when Nazi occultists seized upon Hyperborea as part of their fabricated Aryan mythology. The Thule Society, a precursor to the Nazi Party, claimed the Hyperboreans were a lost master race of blonde-haired, blue-eyed giants who had migrated south to found Atlantis and later Germany. Heinrich Himmler's SS even funded expeditions to Tibet and the Arctic, searching for evidence of this pure ancestral homeland. These pseudo-historical delusions reveal how easily myth can be weaponized, stripped of its wonder and repurposed for hatred. The Nazis ignored the essence of Hyperborea, its harmony with nature, its celebration of art and longevity, instead reducing it to a twisted symbol of racial supremacy. Modern archaeology offers a poignant counterpoint to these distortions. Recent discoveries in Russia's Arctic, like the 3,000-year-old wooden idols of the Ural Mountains or the frozen remains of the mysterious Okhanev culture, hint at sophisticated northern civilizations that thrived in harsh climates. Genetic studies now trace ancient migrations across the Eurasian steppe, showing how interconnected our ancestors truly were, not as a superior race, but as diverse peoples exchanging ideas and traditions. The real Hyperborea may never be found on a map, but its legacy endures as a reminder of humanity's endless capacity to dream of better worlds, and our responsibility to protect those dreams from those who would corrupt them. While Atlantis captivates the Atlantic's imagination, its shadowy twin, Lemuria, lurks beneath the waves of the Pacific, a lost continent born not from ancient myth, but from a Victorian scientist's desperate attempt to explain lemurs. Yes, you heard that right. This sprawling landmass owes its existence to a handful of fuzzy primates. In the 1860s, British zoologist Philip Sclater was baffled. How could lemur fossils exist in both Madagascar and India, separated by thousands of miles of ocean? His solution, a sunken land bridge connecting the two, which he named Lemuria, after the adorable, wide-eyed creatures that inspired it. At first, Lemuria was just a sober geological hypothesis. But then the occultists got hold of it. By the late 19th century, spiritualists like Helena Blavatsky wove Lemuria into their cosmic mythology, transforming it into a glamorous, doomed civilization. Her book, The Secret Doctrine, claimed Lemurians were 15 foot tall, egg-laying hermaphrodites with psychic powers and a third eye, a race wiped out by volcanic fire when their continent sank beneath the Indian Ocean. The contrast with Atlantis is striking. Where Plato's lost kingdom was a warning about hubris, Lemuria became a playground for fringe theories, from hollow earth conspiracies to claims of advanced crystal technology. The wildest twist, modern science accidentally resurrected Lemuria's ghost, sort of. Plate tectonics eventually explained lemur migration without sunken continents, but geologists discovered something even stranger. Beneath the Indian Ocean lies a submerged microcontinent called Mauritius, a fragment of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana that sank 85 million years ago. Meanwhile, off Australia's coast, Zealandia, a mostly underwater landmass larger than India, proves continents can vanish beneath the waves. Neither matches Blavatsky's fever dreams, but they reveal how easily scientific curiosity can spiral into legend. Lemuria's enduring appeal lies in its flexibility. For Tamil nationalists, it's Kumari Kandam, the lost homeland of Dravidian culture. For New Age seekers, it's a spiritual predecessor to Atlantis. And for biologists, a cautionary tale about how even rigorous minds can conjure continents when faced with a good mystery. The real lesson of Lemuria isn't about lost lands, it's about our endless hunger to fill blank spaces on the map, whether with lemurs, psychic giants, or the echoes of our own imaginations. In the smoky scriptoriums of 12th century Europe, as monks hunched over parchment by candlelight, a letter began to circulate that would ignite centuries of obsession. Penned by a mysterious ruler who called himself Prester John, it described a kingdom of unimaginable splendor, rivers flowing with gold, forests teeming with unicorns, and a palace made entirely of crystal. But what truly set hearts racing was the sender's title, a Christian king ruling over a vast empire in the east, surrounded by pagan foes yet undefeated. At a time when Crusader armies were being crushed in the Holy Land, this was more than a fairy tale. It was hope. Hope that somewhere beyond the known world, a powerful ally awaited, ready to join Europe in a holy war against Islam. The legend didn't emerge from thin air. Whispers of a Nestorian Christian kingdom in Asia had drifted along Silk Road trade routes for generations. Nestorians, followers of a branch of Christianity deemed heretical by Rome, had indeed spread as far as China by the 6th century. Marco Polo later claimed to have met descendants of Prester John's subjects in Central Asia, where a Mongol leader named Togrul had converted to Nestorianism. But the myth quickly outpaced reality. By the 1300s, Prester John's kingdom had somehow leaped from Asia to Ethiopia in the European imagination. Maps began labeling Abyssinia as his domain, fueled by rumors of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church's ancient roots. The irony, Ethiopia's real rulers, the Solomonic dynasty, had no idea Europeans were casting them as fantasy allies. What's fascinating isn't just the legend's persistence, it's how it warped to serve political needs. During the Crusades, Prester John was a military savior. When Portugal sought sea routes to India, he became a trading partner waiting to be found. Even Columbus carried a letter of introduction for him on his voyages, just in case. The Vatican sent envoys to Ethiopia, hoping to recruit its emperor for a new crusade, only to discover a sophisticated kingdom that wanted no part of Europe's wars. The real magic of Prester John's story lies in its duality. For Europeans, it was a mirror reflecting their own anxieties and ambitions. For the African and Asian societies claimed by the myth, it was an absurd colonial fantasy. Today, historians see it as a case study in how cultures invent allies to avoid facing their isolation. The kingdom crumbled into metaphor, but its legacy lingers, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful myths aren't about places we've lost, but the allies we wish we had. Off the wild coast of Brittany, where the North Atlantic chews at the jagged cliffs, fishermen still tell warnings about the drowned city of Wise. They say if you listen closely on stormy nights, you can hear church bells tolling beneath the waves, a ghostly echo of a kingdom lost to pride and reckoning. Unlike Atlantis's grand collapse or El Dorado's golden mirage, Wise's downfall hinges on a single, heartbreaking act: a princess who loved too selfishly to see the destruction her desire would bring. The legend begins with Gradlon, a wise king who built Wise behind towering seawalls with a single bronze gate to hold back the ocean's fury. Some say he did it to protect his people. Others whisper it was to indulge his daughter Dahat, a princess who craved luxury like air. Inside those walls, Wise became a city of excess feasts that lasted weeks, wine flowing through fountains and pearls crushed underfoot for the sheer thrill of waste. Dahat, wrapped in silks spun from moonlight, demanded ever more spectacle. Her darkest whim, a new lover each night, only to have him drowned by morning to hide her shame. Then came the storm, or perhaps the saint. Breton lore splits here. One version says Dahat stole the key to the seawall gate from her father's neck, drunk on promises from a knight dressed in seafoam green who may have been the devil himself. Another blames Saint Winwallow, who warned Gradlon of his city's corruption. Either way, the gate swung open. The ocean roared in like a living thing, swallowing towers, streets, and sinners in a single gulp. Gradlon escaped on horseback, his daughter clinging behind, until the saint bade him cast her into the waves to save himself. Today, locals claim the remnants of Wise lie in Baía de Douanenas, where the sand shifts unnaturally at low tide, revealing stones too smooth, too square to be anything but human hands. What chills the bones about Wise isn't just its moral, it's how eerily it mirrors flood myths across cultures. The Welsh speak of Cantre'r Gwaelod, a fertile kingdom drowned when a drunk gatekeeper neglected his duty. India's Matsya Purana tells of Manu, warned by a fish avatar of Vishnu to build an ark before the deluge. Even Mesopotamian tablets describe Atrahasis, spared by the gods for his virtue while his neighbors perished. These stories share more than water. They're about the tension between human ambition and nature's limits. Wise's bronze gate is cousin to the biblical Noah's sealed ark, to the sandbags of modern flood zones, each a fragile barrier against the inevitable. Modern science lends an unsettling footnote. Core samples from Breton marshes show sudden saltwater intrusions around 4,000 years ago, hints of a catastrophic coastal flood. Geologists point to tsunamites, sedimentary layers left by ancient waves along France's western shores. Could Wise be a folk memory of rising seas after the last ice age? Or perhaps a morality tale spun from real drownings like the 20 sunken settlements found off Wales, where stone walls still stand underwater. The genius of Wise's legend is its duality. For Breton Christians, it's a parable of divine punishment. For pre-Celtic pagans, it might have been a warning about disrespecting the sea gods. Today, it feels like an ecological allegory, a city that mistook walls for invincibility, a princess who confused want with need. As tides creep higher on our own shores, the bells of Wise ring clearer, not just as relics of a drowned past, but as a tolling reminder of what happens when we forget the water's patience isn't infinite. The Fountain of Youth, perhaps no myth has been chased with such desperation or left so many skeletons in its wake. While Ponce de Leon's name is forever tied to this legendary spring, his story is just one ripple in a much deeper current. Long before Spanish ships carved through Caribbean waves, humanity was obsessed with conquering time. The Epic of Gilgamesh, carved into clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, gives us our first clue. When the heartbroken King Gilgamesh loses his friend Enkidu, he abandons his throne to seek Utnapishtim, the immortal survivor of the gods' great flood. His prize, a plant hidden at the bottom of the sea that can restore youth. Sound familiar, but here's the twist. After finally finding it, a snake steals the plant, echoing Eden's serpent and the inevitability of mortality. The message is clear: the quest for eternal life might be as old as civilization itself. Fast forward to the early 1500s, when Spanish explorers in the Americas caught whispers of a land called Bimini, where a magical spring could reverse aging. Enter Juan Ponce de Leon, a seasoned conquistador who'd served under Columbus. Historians debate whether he actually sought the fountain. Some claim it was a later fabrication to mock his failed expeditions. But the legend stuck because it fit the era's obsessions. Florida's landscape, with its countless crystal-clear springs gushing from limestone aquifers, must have seemed like proof. The Timucua and Calusa tribes spoke of healing waters, which Spaniards interpreted through their own fantasies. What's chilling isn't just the myth, it's how the search for youth masked darker ambitions. De Leon's voyages paved the way for colonization, disease, and the near erasure of indigenous cultures. The fountain wasn't just a dream, it was an excuse to conquer. Yet the myth's roots spread further than Florida. Alexander the Great allegedly searched for the water of life in Central Asia. Medieval alchemists across Europe and the Middle East distilled elixirs from dew, gold, and mercury, often with fatal results. Even Japan's tale of the bamboo cutter features a moon princess gifting an emperor an elixir he's forbidden to drink. The common thread: these stories aren't really about water, they're about power. Kings and emperors feared death more than poverty or war because mortality was the one enemy their wealth couldn't bribe. Modern science adds a cruel irony to the tale. Florida's silver springs and warm mineral springs, once touted as Ponce de Leon's fabled sites, do have unique properties. The water's mineral content can soothe arthritis, and some aquatic microbes show bizarre resistance to aging. In Russia, Lake Baikal's oxygen-rich fountain of youth fish live decades longer than their species should. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley billionaires pour millions into gene editing and blood plasma transfusions, chasing what De Leon couldn't. The fountain was never a place. It's the human refusal to accept limits, a refusal that fuels both wonder and ruin. What lingers isn't just the fantasy of youth, but the cost of pursuing it. From Gilgamesh's grief to De Leon's bloody footsteps, the real lesson might be that immortality isn't found in water, but in what we leave behind. Every culture that dreamed of the fountain also created art, medicine, and stories that outlived them. Maybe true immortality was never about drinking from a spring, but about becoming part of the river that carries us all. Thule, a name that once described the edge of the known world, a land of mist and midnight sun, later twisted into a nightmare of nationalist obsession. The story begins not with whispered conspiracies, but with a lone Greek explorer named Pytheas, who sailed beyond the Pillars of Hercules around 300 BCE, venturing farther north than any Mediterranean had dared. His account, now lost to time, survives in fragments quoted by later historians. He spoke of a distant island called Thule, 6 days' sail from Britain, where the sea congealed into a sludge and the sun barely set in summer. To Pythias, Thule was less a place than a boundary, the ultimate test of human curiosity. Was it Norway, Iceland, the Shetland Islands? Scholars still debate. But for centuries after, Thule lingered in the European imagination as a symbol of the unexplored, a realm where nature defied logic. Now fast forward 2,000 years. The same name, the same mystique, but warped into something unrecognizable. In the early 20th century, Thule resurfaced not as a geographical puzzle, but as the centerpiece of a dangerous myth. German occultists, hungry for a glorified Aryan past, latched onto Thule as the ancestral homeland of a master race. The Thule Society, founded in 1918, blended racist pseudo-science with esoteric mysticism, claiming this Arctic utopia was the cradle of Atlantis-descended superhumans. Their symbols, runes, swastikas, and swords would later be adopted by the Nazi Party. Heinrich Himmler, Hitler's chief mystic, became obsessed with proving these fantasies, sending expeditions to Tibet and the Arctic in search of blonde-haired, blue-eyed proof of Thule's supremacy. The irony is staggering. A Greek explorer's humble account of sea ice and long days twisted into a justification for genocide. The most chilling aspect of Thule's dual legacy isn't just its hijacking by extremists, it's how easily myth can be weaponized when stripped of context. Pythias' Thule was about wonder, about pushing limits. The Nazis' Thule was about erecting barriers, about inventing a past to justify future horrors. Even today, fringe groups cling to the name, oblivious to its origins. Archaeologists have since found traces of real northern cultures that might have inspired Pythias: the Brochs of Scotland, the Norse settlements in Greenland, even the Sami people's ancient nomadic routes. These weren't mythical supermen, but resilient communities who adapted to the Arctic's harshness, a truth far more remarkable than any Aryan fairy tale. Thule's journey from exploration to exploitation forces us to ask, who gets to define the past? Pythias saw a frontier, the Nazis saw a flag. The difference between myth and madness, it seems, lies in whether we use stories to open doors or to lock them. Golden light bled across the deserts of what's now New Mexico in the 1540s. And with it came a rumor that would drive men to madness. 7 cities, their streets paved with gold, their temples studded with emeralds the size of fists. This was Cibola, a mirage born from a perfect storm of hope, greed, and cultural misunderstanding. The legend began with a shipwrecked friar named Marcos de Niza, who returned to Mexico City with a tale whispered to him by indigenous guides. They spoke of wealthy cities to the north, so magnificent that even their poorest citizens dined from golden plates. But here's the twist: de Niza had likely glimpsed the adobe pueblos of the Zuni people. Under the desert sun, their multi-story mud brick structures would have shimmered like gold to eyes conditioned by European castles. A case of cultural refraction, where expectation bends reality until the two are indistinguishable. When Francisco Vázquez de Coronado led an expedition to find these cities in 1540, the truth hit like a physical blow. Instead of gold, he found humble villages of baked earth. The Zuni, understandably wary of armed strangers, met them with arrows, not open gates. Coronado's letters reveal his fury. "They have lied to me. There is nothing here but huts and cornfields." Yet, even in disappointment, the myth wouldn't die. The Spanish reinterpreted Cibola as a spiritual quest. The cities must be further north, or hidden in caves, or guarded by demons. Because admitting the truth meant confronting a far more terrifying idea, that the New World's riches weren't just lying around for the taking. What makes Cibola's story resonate isn't just the folly of the conquistadors, it's the quiet resilience of the Pueblo peoples who became unwilling players in this delusion. Oral histories from the Acoma and Hopi describe these encounters not as meetings with gods or kings, but as violent intrusions by men who couldn't see the value in what was already there. While Europeans fixated on non-existent gold, they overlooked the real marvels: intricate irrigation systems that turned desert into farmland, celestial observatories carved into cliff dwellings, and turquoise jewelry traded across continents long before Columbus. The afterlife of Cibola is where things get truly strange. Centuries later, American prospectors scouring the Southwest for gold pockets convinced themselves they'd found remnants of the cities, never realizing the treasure was the very land they stood on. Modern geologists now confirm what indigenous people knew all along. The region holds vast mineral wealth from copper to uranium. Even today, conspiracy theorists claim the Spanish hid records of Cibola's true location, or that ancient aliens built the cities before vanishing. The myth endures because it's a Rorschach test. What you see in it says more about you than about history. Perhaps the real lesson of Cibola is about the danger of single-minded desire. The conquistadors were so blinded by gold that they missed the chance to learn from civilizations older than their own. The pueblos still stand today, their walls bearing silent witness to the folly of those who mistake legend for reality, and reality for something lesser. Deep beneath the Himalayas, where the earth's bones press close and the air hums with the echoes of unseen caverns, ancient texts whisper of Agartha, a hidden kingdom lit by an inner sun, its streets lined with crystalline libraries, its people gifted with wisdom beyond time. This isn't just another lost city myth. Agartha straddles the line between spiritual truth and conspiratorial obsession, a story that begins in reverence and twists into something far stranger. The earliest threads of the legend come from Tibetan Buddhist scriptures, which speak of Shambhala's shadowy counterpart, a subterranean realm called Agharti, home to the rishis, enlightened beings who preserved sacred knowledge after cataclysms ravaged the surface. Hindu Puranas describe Patala, a glittering underworld of serpentine deities and gem-studded palaces where sages meditate for millennia. These weren't metaphors. To devout followers, they were literal places accessible through hidden tunnels or spiritual transcendence. The Kalachakra Tantra even gives directions, albeit cryptic ones. Seek the door where the snow lion's roar becomes silence. But how did this mystical concept morph into a cornerstone of hollow earth conspiracy theories? The bridge was a 19th-century French occultist named Alexander Saint-Yves d'Alveder. In 1886, he published The Mission of India, claiming he'd received visions of Agartha's Synarchy, a perfect society ruled by enlightened monarchs using an ancient language called Vatan. His ideas, a cocktail of theosophy and colonial exoticism, caught fire among European mystics. Then came Ferdynand Ossendowski, a Polish adventurer who fled the Russian Revolution and wrote Beasts, Men and Gods in 1922. His account of Mongolian lamas guarding secret tunnels to Agartha, where a king of the world orchestrated global events, read like a thriller. The Nazis, ever hungry for esoteric fuel, sent expeditions to Tibet to find these entrances, convinced Agartha held superweapons or vril energy. The irony is breathtaking. A spiritual concept about inner transformation became a geopolitical fantasy about control. Modern conspiracy theories amplify this distortion, with claims that Agartha's tunnels stretch from Mount Shasta to Antarctica, that its inhabitants fly UFOs, or that it's the true seat of the New World Order. Satellite images of polar anomalies and declassified maps showing entrances near the Arctic Circle only feed the frenzy. Yet beneath the noise, the original teachings still pulse. Tibetan monks speak of Agartha as a state of consciousness, accessible through meditation, not a physical place to plunder, but a realm of the mind to awaken. The real magic of Agartha lies in its duality. To some, it's a refuge of lost truths. To others, a warning about how easily sacred stories can be weaponized. Perhaps the kingdom's most profound lesson is that the deepest mysteries aren't hidden in the Earth's crust, but in our willingness to confuse longing for fact and wisdom for power. For centuries, the legend of the Amazons has tantalized historians and adventurers alike. A fierce tribe of warrior women who shunned men, lopped off their right breasts to better wield bows, and carved out a matriarchal empire in the wilds of the ancient world. Herodotus, the Greek historian often called the father of lies for his tall tales, devoted entire passages to these women, placing them near the Black Sea and describing their battles against Greek heroes like Hercules. But how much of his account was myth, and how much might be rooted in startling archaeological truth? The answer lies not in Greece, but in the windswept steppes of Eurasia, where Soviet archaeologists in the 1970s uncovered graves that turned history on its head. Buried beneath the permafrost near the Russian border with Kazakhstan, they found the remains of Scythian women, some as young as 13, interred with swords, quivers of arrows, and even armor. One particularly striking grave held a woman in a gold headdress, her legs bowed from a lifetime on horseback, surrounded by the skeletons of sacrificed horses. These weren't just any women, they were warriors, archers, and likely leaders. The Scythians, a nomadic culture that spanned from Siberia to the Danube, left no written records, but their burial customs scream a truth Herodotus only glimpsed. Women here fought alongside men, not as anomalies but as equals. Modern feminist scholars have seized on these discoveries to reframe the Amazon myth. Rather than dismissing Herodotus as a purveyor of exotic fantasies, they argue his accounts might have been garbled reports of real Scythian societies. The breast-cutting detail, likely a Greek misunderstanding of how these women bound their chests for battle, reveals more about patriarchal anxieties than historical fact. Even the name Amazon, itself long thought to mean without breast, might actually derive from the Iranian Hamazon, meaning warriors. The irony is rich, a culture that terrified the Greeks not because it was monstrous, but because it suggested a world where women's power wasn't just possible but ordinary. Yet the Amazon's legacy extends far beyond academic debates. From Wonder Woman's comic book origins as an Amazon princess to the all-female Kurdish battalions fighting ISIS today, the idea of warrior women has become a rallying cry. Contemporary artists and activists reimagine these figures not as man-hating anomalies, but as symbols of resistance against gendered oppression. Even pop culture gets in on the act. Remember the Dothraki from Game of Thrones. Their horseback ferocity owes more than a little to Scythian roots. The real magic of the Amazon legend isn't in proving whether they existed as Herodotus described, but in how their story forces us to confront our own biases. For centuries, historians dismissed the idea of warrior women as pure fantasy until the earth itself spat up proof. Now, every arrowhead and gold necklace pulled from those frozen graves whispers a truth we're still catching up to. The past was far more complicated and far more fascinating than our myths ever dared to suggest. The Golden Fleece wasn't just a prize, it was a passport to the edge of the known world, dangling from the branches of a sacred oak in the shadow of the Caucasus Mountains. Jason's quest for it, immortalized in Greek myth, paints Colchis as a land of sorcery and danger, where dragons stood guard and kings demanded impossible trials. But strip away the poetry and you'll find something even more extraordinary, a real kingdom at the crossroads of history, where myth and science blur like mist over the Black Sea. Colchis, modern-day Western Georgia, wasn't some nebulous fantasy realm. Its wealth was legendary, literally. Greek traders knew it as the endpoint of the Gold Road, where precious metals flowed from mountain mines down the Phasis River. Herodotus described Colchians as dark-skinned and woolly-haired, linking them to the Egyptians, while their technique of using sheepskins to sift gold from mountain streams might hold the key to the fleece's origins. Picture this: miners stretching fleeces over wooden frames, then submerging them in rushing water to trap gold flakes in the wool. Over time, the fleeces would glitter like living metal, a practical tool twisted into legend. But Colchis' magic wasn't just metallurgical. Its marshes held another secret, the golden tears of the Zemo-Svaneti region, where high concentrations of sulfur and iron oxide stain the water's ochre red. To Bronze Age observers, this could have looked like the aftermath of Hephaestus' forge or Medea's potions. Even the dragon guarding the fleece might have been inspired by the massive serpentine lindworm lizards native to the region, or the hissing geysers of Georgia's mineral springs. The deeper truth, Jason's journey mirrors real Bronze Age trade routes. Mycenaean pottery shards found near Vanni, an ancient Colchian capital, prove Greek contact. The Argonaut's path through the Dardanelles past Thracian storms to the river Phasis matches actual merchant voyages, and Medea, the Colchian princess who betrayed her father to aid Jason. She might symbolize the cultural bridges built through royal marriages, where foreign wives carried not just dowries but knowledge of metallurgy and medicine. The fleece's legacy lingers in Georgia today. Villagers near Svaneti still pan for gold with sheepskins, preserving techniques unchanged for millennia. The myth lives in their songs, where Jason becomes Iasoni, a fool who needed local wisdom to complete his task. Science offers its own epilogue. Geologists confirm the rivers here carry alluvial gold, with some nuggets like the 3-4-kilogram monster found in 2016, large enough to inspire kings and Argonauts alike. The real magic of Colchis wasn't in enchanted fleeces, but in a land so rich, so strange, that only myths could do it justice. Among the crashing waves of the Atlantic, where the sun sets in a blaze of gold and purple, ancient sailors whispered of a paradise reserved for the greatest of heroes, the Isles of the Blessed. To the Greeks, this was the ultimate reward for those favored by the gods, a place where the air was always warm, the fields bore fruit without labor, and souls reveled in eternal peace. But this wasn't the only vision of a divine afterlife thriving in the ancient imagination. The Celts spoke of their own enchanted islands, places like Avalon, shrouded in mist, where wounded kings like Arthur were carried to heal and where time itself seemed to stand still. What's fascinating isn't just the existence of these myths, but how two vastly different cultures, separated by geography and language, converged on strikingly similar visions of paradise. Take Elysium, the Greek counterpart to the Isles of the Blessed. Homer first described it in the Odyssey as a far western land where the hero Menelaus would enjoy immortality simply because he was married to Zeus's daughter Helen. Later poets expanded the idea, painting it as a verdant expanse reserved for demigods, virtuous leaders, and those who'd been reincarnated 3 times without moral failing. There's an intriguing tension here. Unlike the gloomy monotony of Hades, Elysium wasn't just a resting place. It was a dynamic afterlife where heroes continued to train, feast, and celebrate. Some texts even suggest that after 1,000 years, these souls could drink from the river Lethe, forget their past, and return to the world of the living, hinting at an early belief in cyclical rebirth. Now cross the sea to Celtic Britain, where Avalon's orchards bore golden apples that never rotted, and the veil between the living and the dead grew thin. Unlike the structured hierarchy of Elysium, Avalon was more fluid, a liminal space where time bent and magic thrived. The Arthurian legend of the wounded king ferried to Avalon mirrors older Celtic myths of heroes like Bran the Blessed, who journeyed to an otherworldly island where wounds healed overnight and a single day felt like a lifetime. The parallel between Greek and Celtic beliefs isn't coincidental. Both cultures placed their paradises in the distant west, the direction of the setting sun, symbolizing endings and new beginnings. Both saw these realms as places of healing, renewal, and divine favor. Yet the differences are just as telling. Greek afterlife myths were deeply tied to morality. Elysium was earned through virtue or divine favor. Celtic otherworlds, on the other hand, were often accessible through trickery, invitation, or sheer luck. A chance encounter with a fairy, a wrong turn in a misty forest, or a summons from a mystical boatman could transport mortals to these realms regardless of their virtue. This reflects a broader cultural contrast. The Greeks valued order and justice, while the Celts embraced unpredictability and the capriciousness of fate. The enduring allure of these myths lies in their adaptability. When Christianity spread through Europe, Elysium and Avalon didn't disappear, they transformed. Early Christian monks reimagined Avalon as a holy isle, a precursor to heaven, while Dante's Divine Comedy borrowed elements of Elysium for his vision of paradise. Even today, the idea of an island paradise lingers in pop culture, from Lost's mysterious island to Pirates of the Caribbean's uncharted afterlives. The real magic of these myths isn't their geography, but their promise that beyond the struggles of this world, there's a place where pain ends, time dissolves, and heroes never fade. Whether Greek, Celtic, or something in between, we're still searching for those blessed shores. Across the ochre-red deserts and monsoon-drenched floodplains of Australia, the rainbow serpent slumbers in dreamtime, ancient, vast, and alive. More than just a myth, this creator deity weaves through the stories of over 200 Aboriginal nations, its shimmering scales painting the sky after storms and its coils shaping the very bones of the land. But this isn't just a tale from the past. To Indigenous Australians, the rainbow serpent is both ancestor and lawmaker, a living force that carved rivers with its body and taught humans how to live in harmony with a fragile earth. The stories vary from region to region, but certain threads remain constant. In Arnhem Land, the serpent is called Ungaliod, a being who emerged from beneath the earth in the dreaming, the sacred era when the world was formed. As it traveled, its powerful body gouged valleys, filled waterholes, and scattered life in its wake. When angry, it could flood the land or withhold rain, punishing those who broke its laws. Among the Kulin people of Victoria, the serpent Bunjil takes the form of a wedge-tailed eagle, but carries the same life-giving power, embodying the connection between sky, earth, and water. What unites these versions is an understanding that the serpent isn't merely a symbol. It's the land itself, pulsing with sacred energy. Water is the serpent's language. In dry seasons, it sleeps beneath stagnant pools, conserving its power. When the rains come, it stirs, its movements triggering thunderstorms and filling parched riverbeds. Aboriginal elders teach that disrespecting water sources, polluting them, or taking more than needed risks awakening the serpent's wrath. These aren't just moral lessons, they're precise ecological observations honed over 60,000 years. Modern hydrologists studying Australia's boom and bust water cycles have noted how closely these myths align with real patterns. Ephemeral rivers that vanish for years, then surge unpredictably, or aquifers that refill only when specific conditions are met. The rainbow serpent's moods mirror the land's delicate balance, encoding survival knowledge in story. The serpent's lessons stretch beyond ecology. Its creation stories often include warnings about greed and disrespect. One tale from the Kimberley region tells of a village that hoarded a secret waterhole. When the serpent discovered their selfishness, it swallowed them whole, leaving behind a lake as a reminder to share. Another story describes how its rainbow bridge connects Earth to the spirit world, reinforcing the idea that humans are custodians, not conquerors, of nature. These narratives functioned as legal systems, governing resource use and social behavior long before European colonizers arrived. European accounts initially dismissed the serpent as primitive superstition. But in the 1970s, archaeologist Joseph Campbell recognized it as one of humanity's oldest continuous religious symbols, with petroglyphs of sinuous, undulating figures dating back at least 6,000 years. Today, scientists acknowledge how these stories preserved biodiversity. Fire stick farming controlled burns practiced by Aboriginal peoples was guided by serpent lore, maintaining ecosystems that collapsed under colonial mismanagement. Even the serpent's association with rainbows finds an eerie parallel in atmospheric science. The refraction of light after storms mirrors the serpent's reported transformations between water and light. The rainbow serpent's greatest power lies in its adaptability. During the Australian government's brutal assimilation policies, when Aboriginal children were stolen from their families, elders secretly kept the stories alive in hidden paintings and whispered songs. Now, those stories are reclaiming their place, inspiring modern environmental movements. Artists like Ginger Riley Manjuwalawala reimagine the serpent in vibrant acrylics, while filmmakers weave its imagery into campaigns protecting the great artesian basin from mining. The serpent slithers into the 21st century not as a relic, but as a rallying cry, a reminder that the oldest stories might hold the keys to our survival. In the frigid winters of 1535, as French explorer Jacques Cartier pushed deeper into the uncharted territories of modern-day Quebec, his ears burned with a promise that would haunt European imaginations for centuries, a kingdom richer than the Aztec Empire. Its streets lined with gold, spices, and furs, ruled by a people with skin so pale they shone like moonlight. This was the legendary kingdom of Saguenay, a whispered utopia that transformed from misunderstood indigenous lore into one of history's most stubborn colonial fantasies. The spark came from Donnacona, chief of the Iroquoian village Stadacona, now Quebec City, who spoke of a wealthy nation up the Saguenay River. Historians now believe this was either a trading partner or rival nation, perhaps the Wendat or Anishinaabe, whose goods traveled through indigenous trade networks. But Cartier's hunger for glory refracted these details into something unrecognizable. When Donnacona described copper mines and vast hunting grounds, Cartier heard vaults of gold. When he spoke of alliances, Cartier imagined subjugation. The result, a phantom kingdom mapped onto European cravings, its supposed location shifting with every failed expedition, sometimes north near Hudson Bay, sometimes west where the Great Lakes meet. What makes Saguenay's legend so revealing is how it mirrors earlier myths like El Dorado, yet twists them with eerie local specificity. French accounts described blonde-haired Saguenayans who wore woolen robes impossible in pre-contact North America and worshipped crystal idols. Some even claimed these people were descendants of Norse settlers or Welsh princes, weaving racist pseudo-science into the tale. The irony cuts deep. While Europeans obsessed over this fabricated kingdom, real Iroquoian confederacies like the Huron-Wendat were building sophisticated agricultural societies with vast corn surpluses and democratic councils, a truth ignored because it didn't fit colonial templates of savagery or treasure. Archaeology adds another layer to the mystery. Recent digs along the Saguenay River have uncovered copper artifacts traceable to Lake Superior, proving extensive trade routes existed. A ceremonial pipe found near Lac Saint-Jean, carved in the shape of a mythical underwater panther, hints at the spiritual significance indigenous peoples attached to these waterways. To them, Saguenay wasn't a place to plunder, but part of a living network of stories like the Algonquin legend of the Great Lynx, a spirit guarding underwater copper deposits. The French heard these tales and saw only loot waiting to be claimed. The myth's afterlife is equally fascinating. Long after New France became British Canada, Saguenay resurfaced in 19th century literature as a romantic, lost civilization, echoing Gothic fascination with ruins. Even today, conspiracy theorists claim Viking runes or medieval armor lie hidden in Quebec's boreal forests, but the real legacy is subtler. Modern Innu and Cree oral histories speak of Mistapu, a giant guardian of the Saguenay's waters, a reminder that while Europeans chased ghosts, indigenous wisdom centered on stewardship. The kingdom of Saguenay endures not as history, but as a cautionary tale about the stories we choose to hear and those we drown out in our hunger for gold. Deep beneath the ruins of Crete's Palace of Knossos, where faded frescoes still show acrobats leaping over bulls, lies a maze of corridors so intricate that even modern archaeologists get lost. This wasn't just a royal home, it was a sprawling, multi-level labyrinth of storerooms, workshops, and sacred chambers, its layout so chaotic that early excavators dubbed it the House of the Double Axe. And here's where myth and masonry collide. Could this 3,000-year-old complex be the real-world inspiration for the Minotaur's labyrinth, the monstrous hybrid trapped beneath King Minos' palace, demanding its gruesome tribute of Athenian youths? The legend is vivid, a creature half man, half bull, born from Queen Pasiphae's unnatural union with a sacred bull, hidden away in a maze so devious no one could escape. Every 9 years, 7 boys and 7 girls were sent into its depths, never to return. But step into Knossos today and you'll notice something eerie. The palace's ground plan, with its sudden dead ends, twisting passageways and lightless chambers, mirrors the psychological terror of the myth. Even the double axe symbols carved into its walls, labyrinths in ancient Greek, might have given us the very word labyrinth. But the truth is even richer than the tale. Sir Arthur Evans, the British archaeologist who excavated Knossos in the early 1900s, famously reconstructed parts of the palace with bright red columns and flamboyant frescoes, leading critics to accuse him of fantasy. Yet his instincts weren't entirely off. The Minoans, Europe's first advanced civilization, worshipped bulls with an intensity that borders on obsession. Their art is full of bull-leaping rituals, athletes vaulting over charging animals in what might have been a coming-of-age rite. The Minotaur, then, could be a grotesque exaggeration of these sacred games, its hunger a metaphor for the very real risks of the arena. Now let's peel back another layer. The Minotaur wasn't just a monster, it was a political weapon. Athenian versions of the myth paint King Minos as a tyrant, demanding tribute from their city, a likely allegory for Crete's dominance over the Aegean before its sudden collapse around 1450 BCE. The labyrinth becomes a symbol of oppression, its winding paths reflecting the suffocating grip of Minoan power. But Cretan oral traditions tell a different story. Fragments of older myths suggest the Minotaur may have originally been a guardian spirit, a bull-headed protector of the palace's innermost sanctums. The tribute of youths perhaps initiates undergoing secret rites in the labyrinth's heart, emerging reborn. Psychology offers yet another lens. Carl Jung saw the Minotaur as the shadow self, the brutal, untamed part of human nature we lock away. The labyrinth, then, is the mind's convoluted corridors where we confront our deepest fears. Modern therapists even use labyrinth imagery in trauma work, guiding patients to face the beast at their core. It's no coincidence that the myth's hero, Theseus, needed a thread to navigate the maze. We all need guides when delving into our own darkness. The haunting beauty of Knossos is that it refuses to be pinned down. Was it a palace, a temple, or both? Were its twisty halls designed to confuse invaders or to mimic the sacred dance of the stars, as some astronomers suggest? The Minotaur's legend endures because it's not just about a monster in a maze. It's about power, sacrifice, and the things we bury beneath our grandest constructions. Every crumbling fresco, every axe mark on the stone, whispers a truth as old as humanity. We build labyrinths to hide what we fear most, whether it's a beast, a king's shame, or the wildness inside ourselves. In the scorching sands of ancient Egypt, where the Nile's lifeblood met the endless desert, rose the city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun. Here, priests worshipped Ra, the fiery disk whose daily journey across the sky mirrored the cycle of life and death. And at the heart of this cult burned a legend that would transcend empires. The Bennu bird, a radiant heron said to rise from its own ashes every 500 years. This wasn't just a poetic metaphor. The Bennu story was etched into temple walls centuries before Greek travelers ever set foot on Egyptian soil. Its feathers gilded in hieroglyphs as a symbol of resurrection and the Nile's annual rebirth. When Herodotus visited Heliopolis in the 5th century BCE, he scribbled notes about this phoenix, mangling the name but capturing its essence, a creature that died in flames only to emerge anew, trailing smoke and splendor. The Greeks, ever the myth weavers, took the Bennu and spun it into their own cosmic tapestry. By the time Ovid penned his Metamorphoses, the phoenix had become a scarlet and gold marvel, its lifespan stretched to a mystical 1,000 years. When its time came, it built a nest of cinnamon and myrrh, igniting itself in a blaze so pure it could revive the dead. But here's the twist: the Greeks didn't just copy the myth, they fused it with their own sun worship. Apollo's chariot pulling the sun across the sky mirrored Ra's solar barge, and the phoenix became a bridge between cultures, its cyclical rebirth echoing the eternal return celebrated in Eleusinian mysteries. Even the bird's fiery end resonated with pre-Socratic philosophers like Heraclitus, who saw fire as the primal element consuming and renewing all things. Yet the phoenix's wings stretched far beyond the Mediterranean. In China, the fenghuang, often called the Chinese phoenix, wasn't just a solitary rebirther but a duality, yin and yang fused into a single creature of harmony. Its appearance signaled the rise of virtuous rulers, its 5 colors representing Confucian virtues. Meanwhile, Persian Zoroastrians revered the simurgh, a colossal, wise bird that lived 1700 years before immolating itself, only to rise again, a clear parallel to the Bennu, likely carried along Silk Road trade routes. Even the Jewish Talmud speaks of the milcham, a deathless bird that refused Eve's forbidden fruit, earning eternal life by feeding its offspring the ashes of its previous incarnation. What makes the phoenix endure isn't just its dazzling death and rebirth spectacle, it's the raw human longing it embodies. The same impulse that made Egyptians bury mummies with amulets of the Bennu drives modern cancer survivors to tattoo phoenixes on their scars. When J.K. Rowling named Dumbledore's pet fox, or when cities adopt the phoenix as a symbol of post-war rebuilding, they're tapping into a mythic vein older than pyramids. Science offers its own eerie echo in the phenomenon of epigenetic reset, where certain animals can regenerate entire limbs or even reverse aging under stress, a biological glimmer of the phoenix's promise. The real magic of Heliopolis' legacy lies in its adaptability. From Ra's temples to Roman coins stamped with phoenixes to Phoenix, Arizona's sprawling suburbs, the myth mutates but never dies. It's a testament to humanity's refusal to accept finality, our stubborn belief that from every ending, whether of empires, relationships, or personal struggles, something new can take flight. The phoenix doesn't just rise from ashes, it carries embers of hope across millennia, proving that some fires never truly go out. Off the western coast of Ireland, where the Atlantic's waves carve cliffs into jagged teeth, the Celts whispered of Tir na an Og, the land of youth. This wasn't just another paradise, it was a realm where time stood still, where apple trees bore fruit that granted immortality, and where every day was a feast without end. But what made this otherworld unique wasn't its bliss, it was the doors that led there. Some were physical, like the ancient passage tomb of Newgrange, its massive stone corridor perfectly aligned with the winter solstice sunrise. Others were fleeting, a sudden mist on the shoreline, a hidden cave behind a waterfall, or a boatman emerging from the fog with an invitation. Step through, and you might dance with the Tuatha De Danann, the godlike beings who retreated to these realms when mortals claimed Ireland. But here's the catch: return home, and centuries could pass in a blink. The tragic tale of Oisin, who spent 3 blissful years in Tir na an Og only to crumble to dust upon touching Irish soil, captures the otherworld's cruel beauty, a place that giveth eternal life, yet taketh away your place in time. The genius of Celtic mythology lies in how it blurred the lines between the mystical and the mundane. Tir na an Og wasn't some distant heaven, it coexisted with the human world, layered over it like a second skin. The Shia, pronounced She, or fairy mounds, dotted the Irish countryside hills that opened under moonlight to reveal glittering halls. Modern archaeology confirms these weren't just fantasy. Many Shia, like the Brú na Bóinne complex, are Neolithic tombs repurposed by later Celtic storytellers. The Celts didn't see death as an end but as a door. Even their language reflected this duality. Anail na an Og, the breath of youth, could mean both literal air and the life force pulsing through these hidden realms. Tir na an Og's influence stretches far beyond ancient campfires. J.R.R. Tolkien's undying lands in The Lord of the Rings, where elves sail west to a paradise beyond mortal reach, borrow heavily from Celtic lore. The Narnia of C.S. Lewis, with its time-warping portals and talking beasts, echoes the otherworld's rule-bending logic. Even Harry Potter's Room of Requirement, appearing only when needed, feels like a sheer mound reshaped for modern magic. But the most striking legacy might be in video games like The Witcher 3, where the hauntingly beautiful land of Tau-Saint mirrors Tir Na En Og's Eternal Autumn, or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where Norse and Celtic afterlife myths collide in shimmering, time-lost realms. What makes these stories endure isn't just their escapism, it's their warnings. The otherworld wasn't a safe haven, it was a test. Heroes entered at their peril, often paying a steep price for its gifts. The Welsh tale of Branwen shows how even a single otherworldly bird song could make listeners forget their homes for decades. These myths taught balance, the allure of eternal youth versus the cost of losing your roots, the temptation of endless feasts versus the erosion of mortal purpose. In an age of digital distractions and curated online personas, Tir Na En Og feels eerily relevant, a reminder that not all that glitters is worth the losing of time. Standing in Newgrange today, watching solstice light creep down its 5,000-year-old passage, you can almost hear the echo of harps from beyond the veil. The stones themselves seem to hum with the old truth that the otherworld was never just a place but a perspective. To the Celts, the land was alive, threaded with invisible roads walked by gods and ancestors. Modern visitors still leave offerings at Shia mounds, coins, flowers, whispered wishes, proving that some doors never fully close. Whether you see Tir Na En Og as metaphor or reality, its lesson lingers like mist over the Irish Sea. The world is deeper than it seems, and every step might be a threshold to something older, wilder, and far more alive than we dare believe. In the summer of 1590, a group of English settlers landed on the windswept shores of Roanoke Island, eager to carve out a new life in the uncharted wilderness of what would one day be North Carolina. 3 years later, when a supply ship finally returned, the entire colony had vanished without a trace. No bodies, no battle scars, just a single cryptic clue carved into a wooden post: the word Croatoan. This wasn't just America's first English colony, it was its first great unsolved mystery, a riddle wrapped in whispers of indigenous legends, whispered curses, and even supernatural intervention. The name Croatoan wasn't random. It pointed to Hatteras Island, home to the Croatoan people, a branch of the Algonquian tribe. Governor John White, the colony's leader who'd left to secure supplies, clung to hope that the settlers had sought refuge there. But storms and political squabbles delayed his return for years, and by the time he reached Hatteras, no trace of the colonists remained. Some historians argue the settlers assimilated with the Croatoan, pointing to later reports of fair-skinned, blue-eyed tribal members. Others suggest a darker fate: attacks by rival tribes or Spanish raiders from Florida. But the absence of definitive evidence has left the door wide open for speculation. Enter the supernatural theories. Local legends speak of the lost colony lights, eerie blue orbs said to flicker over the marshes where the settlers last stood. Some claim these are the ghosts of the colonists forever searching for home. Others whisper of a curse placed by a Croatoan shaman, angry at the newcomers' intrusion. Even archaeology adds fuel to the fire. Excavations on Hatteras Island have unearthed Elizabethan-era artifacts, a signet ring, gun parts, and a slate pencil possibly used by a child. But instead of solving the mystery, these finds deepen it. Were these objects traded, stolen, or left behind by survivors? The most haunting twist comes from the oral histories of the Lumbee tribe, who claim descent from both the Croatoan and the lost settlers. Their stories tell of ancestors who spoke an odd mix of English and Algonquian, and who kept heirlooms like a ghost book with strange markings. In the 1930s, a stone tablet surfaced near Roanoke, covered in what appeared to be Elizabethan script, detailing a massacre by savages. But scholars quickly dismissed it as a hoax, too convenient, too theatrical. Yet the doubt lingers, what if some fragment of truth was buried beneath the forgery? Modern science has only amplified the enigma. Soil analysis suggests the colony's final location might now lie underwater, eroded by centuries of rising seas. Dendrochronology tree ring dating reveals that the late 1580s were marked by extreme drought, a possible motive for the settlers to abandon Roanoke. Even genetics plays a role. DNA testing of present-day Lumbee descendants shows European ancestry, but the timeline remains murky. The real tragedy of Roanoke isn't just the disappearance, it's how the truth seems to slip through our fingers like sand, no matter how tightly we clutch. Perhaps the colony's greatest legacy is what it tells us about fear and the unknown. Every generation reinvents Roanoke to fit its anxieties. To the Victorians, it was a cautionary tale of colonial arrogance. During the Cold War, wild theories emerged of alien abductions. Today, some see it as an allegory for environmental collapse. The one constant is the human need to fill silence with stories. The settlers may be gone, but their mystery lives on, not in the ground, but in our imagination, where every new clue is a doorway to another question. High in the branches of Yggdrasil, the great world tree of Norse mythology, shimmered a realm woven from sunlight and song. Alfheim, the homeland of the light elves. To the Vikings, this wasn't just some distant fairyland. It was a tangible layer of the cosmos, as real as Midgard, the human world, or Asgard, the realm of gods. But these elves weren't the tiny, mischievous sprites of later European folklore. Norse sagas describe the Eldjolfar light elves as radiant beings, taller than humans, their skin glowing like dawn ice, their wisdom rivaling even Odin's. They were healers, poets, and keepers of a magic so potent it could mend broken bones or blight entire harvests with a whisper. Yet for all their grace, they were perilously alien, capricious as northern lights, granting favors or curses based on whims mortals could never fully grasp. What makes Alfheim especially fascinating is how it blurs the lines between realms. Snorri Sturluson's prose Edda places it right beside Asgard in the heavens, suggesting a divine connection. But Icelandic folktales insist elf doors hide in certain moss-covered boulders, implying they share our world just out of phase. Farmers left offerings of milk and honey at these rocks to avoid elf-induced sickness, a tradition surviving into the 19th century. This duality, elves as both celestial and earthly, reflects the Norse worldview, where the supernatural wasn't separate but layered like birch bark over daily life. Even the word alpha might share roots with albis, an ancient Germanic term for white or shining, linking them to ancestral spirits lingering at burial mounds. Now cross the North Sea to the British Isles, where Viking raids carried fragments of Alfheim into local lore. The Anglo-Saxons spoke of Aelf, blending Norse elves with Celtic Shia and Roman nymphs. Over centuries, these beings shrank in stature but grew in trickery, becoming the flower-crowned fairies of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, yet traces of their Viking ancestry lingered. Irish tales of the Owls She fairies who demand respect echo Norse warnings about offending elves. The Scottish Trow, who steal unbaptized babies, mirror darker alpha legends where they snatch souls. It's as if Alfheim shattered into 1,000 pieces, each culture catching a different shard. Enter J.R.R. Tolkien, a scholar of Old Norse who wove these fragments back together. His Middle-earth elves, tall, immortal, and luminous, are direct descendants of the Eldjolfar. Rivendell's ethereal beauty, that's Alfheim's hallowed glades reborn. Galadriel's mirror, a nod to Norse elves' scrying powers. Even the conflict between light and dark elves in the Silmarillion mirrors the prose Edda's distinction between radiant Eldjolfar and their shadowy cousins, the Dyrkulfar. Tolkien didn't just borrow names, he resurrected the original awe and dread elves once inspired. When Legolas walks on snow without sinking, or senses distant orcs through the earth, he's channeling Viking descriptions of elves moving effortlessly between worlds. Modern archaeology adds a haunting footnote. In Sweden, burial sites show Iron Age graves deliberately placed near elf-associated boulders, suggesting ancestor worship. Rune stones warn against disturbing alpha-blot elf sacrifice sites, while Icelandic sagas recount kings consulting elf-blooded oracles. These weren't childish fantasies, they were threads in a belief system as complex as any religion. Today, as scientists study how low-frequency sound vibrations near certain rock formations can induce trance states, one wonders, did the Vikings discover something about their landscape that modern instruments are only now detecting? Elfheim's legacy is a reminder that myth is rarely invented, it evolves. From Viking skaldic verses to Tolkien's typewriter to fantasy games like Skyrim, where the snow elf ruins gleam with forgotten magic, each retelling adds layers without erasing the old. The light elves haven't vanished, they've simply stepped sideways into our stories, waiting for those who know where to look. Perhaps that mossy boulder in your local woods hums with more than just wine. In the year 421 CE, as war and chaos tore through China's Jin dynasty, a disillusioned government official named Tao Yuanming laid down his brush and walked away from court life forever. Retiring to a humble farm, he penned a poem that would outlast empires, The Peach Blossom Spring, a vision of paradise so potent it still haunts the Chinese imagination 15 centuries later. The tale begins with a fisherman, his boat lost in a mist-shrouded river, stumbling upon a grove of peach trees in full bloom. Petals fall like pink snow as he follows the trees upstream, drawn by an otherworldly fragrance. Then the earth itself seems to part. A hidden cleft in the mountain reveals a tunnel just wide enough for a man to pass. Emerging on the other side, he finds a village untouched by time, where generations have lived in peace since fleeing the wars of the Qin dynasty centuries prior. The villagers, dressed in antique robes, welcome him with wine and song, their faces unlined by worry. Yet when the fisherman leaves, promising to return, the path vanishes behind him as if it had never been, leaving only the memory of blossoms drifting on the water. Tao's story wasn't just escapism. It was a manifesto wrapped in myth, a critique of the corruption and violence he'd witnessed in court. The Peach Blossom Springs villagers embodied Taoist ideals. No taxes, no strife, no rigid hierarchies, just harmony with nature's rhythms. Their ignorance of dynastic changes outside mirrors Zhuangzi's philosophy that the sage is dead to the world, rejecting societal constructs for inner peace. Even the peach tree, a symbol of immortality in Chinese lore, hints at the villagers' escape from time's ravages. But here's the twist: the tale's enduring power lies in its ambiguity. Is the spring a physical place, a spiritual state, or a metaphor for artistic creation? Tao refuses to say, leaving the door between reality and reverie forever ajar. Parallels to Shangri-La are irresistible. Both are hidden valleys where time stalls, discovered by chance and lost to those who seek them with greed. But where Hilton's Himalayan utopia is static and priestly, Tao's vision is earthy and communal. Shangri-La preserves esoteric knowledge. The Peach Blossom Spring nurtures simple joy. This difference reflects deeper cultural roots. While Shangri-La emerged from British colonial fantasies of exotic wisdom, Tao's spring grew from Taoism's reverence for the uncarved block, the unpretentious life. The story's afterlife is as elusive as the spring itself. Tang dynasty poets wrote of searching for it in vain. Ming painters' scrolls depicted its blossoms with aching delicacy. During the Cultural Revolution, it became coded dissent, a dream of respite from political storms. Today, real-life Peach Blossom Springs dot China's tourist maps, from the karst landscapes of Guangxi to the peach orchards of Hunan. Yet none quite capture the original's melancholy magic, perhaps because Tao's genius was in crafting not a location, but a longing one that resonates with anyone who's ever yearned for a sanctuary from life's chaos. Modern ecologists offer an unexpected footnote. The tale's description of villagers farming in harmony with forests mirrors sustainable practices now touted as solutions to climate change. Even the vanished path echoes contemporary theories about rewilding, how landscapes heal when human interference retreats. The peach blossom spring endures not as a place to find, but as a question. What would it cost us to live gently enough that paradise wouldn't need to hide? Spanish conquistadors trudging through the sweltering jungles of the Yucatan in the 16th century carried more than just weapons and armor. They hold an obsession with cities. Not just any cities, but glittering metropolises rumored to outshine even Tenochtitlan, paved with jade and crowned with pyramids that scraped the heavens. These weren't mere fantasies, fueled by indigenous tales whispered around campfires and glimpses of vine-choked ruins peering through the canopy. Legends of the Maya's crystal cities became the holy grail of New World exploration. Take the account of Friar Diego de Landa, whose 1566 Relación de los Cosas de Yucatán described labyrinthine stone complexes abandoned centuries before his arrival. He wrote of structures so precisely aligned with the stars that they must have been built by giants, and of sacred cenotes where emerald green waters swallowed gold offerings. Then there's the wilder tale of Ciudad Blanca, the White City, said to gleam like alabaster somewhere in the Mosquisha rainforest. Hernán Cortés himself claimed to have heard of it from indigenous guides, a place where monkey-shaped idols dripped with pearls and the very walls hummed with ancient magic. But here's where history twists into something darker. These stories weren't just inspiration, they were justification. The Spanish reframed Maya ruins as evidence of a fallen civilization needing Christian salvation, erasing living indigenous connections to these sites. When they discovered Palenque in 1787, they assumed it must have been built by Egyptians or lost tribes of Israel, unable to conceive that Maya descendants still living nearby were its architects. This colonial lens distorted early archaeology, sending treasure hunters like John Lloyd Stephens and Frederick Cather Wood scrambling to document and often loot sites like Capon and Chichen Itza in the 1840s, their stunning illustrated accounts reigniting global fascination. Modern laser technology reveals how much the conquistadors missed. LiDAR scans show entire megalopolis networks beneath the jungle-raised highways connecting Tikal to El Mirador, reservoirs engineered with mathematical precision, and ceremonial centers aligned to celestial events. The real crystal cities weren't paved with literal gems, but with knowledge. Maya astronomers predicting eclipses within seconds, engineers mastering hydraulics in a land without rivers, and artists carving stelae that tell dynastic sagas rivaling Homer's epics. The cruel irony, the very myths that drove colonization now help to colonize Maya history. Indigenous activists today reclaim these sites not as lost cities but as living landscapes. At Chichen Itza, Maya guides point out how the serpent shadow slithering down El Castillo at equinoxes isn't just a spectacle, it's a centuries-old agricultural calendar. The crystal cities weren't abandoned, they were waiting for us to see them through new eyes. In the shadowed aisles of 13th century European churches, a terrifying legend began to spread. A story not of mythical beasts or enchanted lands, but of a cursed man forced to walk the earth until Judgment Day. The Wandering Jew, as he came to be called, was said to have been a shoemaker in Jerusalem who taunted Jesus on the way to crucifixion, receiving in turn an awful punishment. "You shall wander until I return." This figure, condemned to eternal exile without rest or death, became one of medieval Christianity's most potent anti-Semitic tropes, a walking embodiment of alleged Jewish guilt for deicide. Yet something remarkable happened over centuries. What began as religious vilification slowly transformed, through the alchemy of storytelling, into an unlikely symbol of resilience and the universal experience of displacement. The earliest written account surfaces in 1228, when an English chronicler reported meeting an Armenian bishop who knew of this ageless wanderer. By the 16th century, pamphlets across Germany and Italy claimed sightings a ragged figure who'd witnessed every major historical event but could never stay. The descriptions dripped with prejudice: hunched shoulders, a long beard, eyes filled with either malice or despair. Churches used the tale to warn against unbelief, while crusaders invoked it to justify persecution. But here's where the story twists. As it passed through mouths and manuscripts, the wandering Jew began slipping free of his creator's control. In some versions, he wasn't a villain but a tragic figure, weeping for the world's cruelties. In others, he became a scholar who'd learned every language during his endless travels, a living library of vanished cultures. The Enlightenment wrestled the legend into new shapes. Voltaire recast the wanderer as a philosophical provocateur, while romantic poets like Shelley saw him as a Byronic hero cursed with unbearable wisdom. By the 19th century, Jewish writers reclaimed the figure entirely. One stirring Yiddish play depicted him not as a cursed outcast, but as a witness to Jewish survival through pogroms and expulsions, his endless walking no longer a punishment, but proof of unbreakable spirit. This reinterpretation reached its zenith during the Holocaust, when survivors secretly circulated stories of the wandering Jew as a metaphor for their own forced marches and hiding. Modern artists continue to reshape the legend. Neil Gaiman's Sandman comics reimagine him as a man granted immortality not by curse, but by storytellers' collective belief. Jorge Luis Borges penned a haunting version where the wanderer finally forgets his name, becoming everyone and no one. Even science fiction has adopted the trope. Consider Doctor Who's immortal Time Lord or Highlander's Duncan MacLeod, both echoing the same themes of endless time and lonely wisdom. The real power of this myth lies in its mutability. What medieval preachers meant as a warning became, across generations, a mirror for society's deepest anxieties about mortality, belonging, and the price of knowledge. The wandering Jew's greatest revenge against his creators might be this: they designed him as a monster, but humanity remade him into something far more profound, a testament to how stories, like people, can never truly be imprisoned. While knights waged wars and peasants scraped sustenance from drought-stricken fields, medieval storytellers dreamed of a land beyond suffering, a place where rivers ran with wine, roasted pigs trotted by with knives conveniently stuck in their backs, and laziness was the highest virtue. Welcome to Kokani, the most deliciously subversive utopia ever concocted by hungry minds. Unlike heavenly paradises or Arthurian otherworlds, this imaginary realm was pure earthly indulgence, a direct rebellion against the grueling reality of feudal Europe. Picture this: houses built of barley sugar and cakes, trees dripping honey, and fountains spouting spiced ale. Even the weather obeyed whims. Snow fell as whipped cream, and the sun hung motionless to guarantee eternal nap time. What makes Kokani fascinating isn't just its excess, but its origins in genuine desperation. The legend first surfaced in 13th century poems, when crop failures and the Little Ice Age turned daily bread into a luxury. Chroniclers described peasants grinding acorns into flour and eating bark stripped from trees. In this context, Kokani wasn't mere fantasy, it was psychological survival. Starving minds envisioned walls made of sausage because actual larders stood empty. The satire cut deeper, too. In a world where the church preached asceticism as the path to salvation, Kokani's inhabitants earned paradise by doing absolutely nothing. Monks were depicted lazing in butter baths, flipping sacred texts into pillows, a cheeky critique of clerical hypocrisy during famines that saw monasteries hoarding grain. Yet Kokani had a dark twin: the real-life, lazy villages, documented in famine-era chronicles. When crops failed for consecutive years, entire communities reportedly took to their beds to conserve energy, subsisting on boiled nettles until too weak to stand. Some historians argue these sleeping villages inspired Cocaine's infamous Sleeping Hills, where citizens dozed on clouds of pudding. The line between coping mechanism and societal breakdown blurred. What storytellers framed as hedonism might have been a coded description of starvation-induced lethargy. The myth's legacy slithers into unexpected corners. Dutch painters like Pieter Bruegel the Elder captured Cocaine's spirit in canvases where gluttons wallowed in food while missing the actual harvest around them, a warning about the dangers of unchecked indulgence. Modern food historians see parallels in today's fast food culture, where instant gratification masks systemic issues of food deserts and overprocessed diets. Even the term pie in the sky owes a debt to Cocaine's floating edible architecture. Perhaps the most poignant twist, similar food-based utopias appear across cultures facing scarcity. The Chinese land of the full belly mirrors Cocaine's rivers of broth, while indigenous Mexican lore speaks of the mountain of sustenance where blue corn grew eternally. These weren't coincidences, they were universal responses to hunger's trauma. Cocaine endures because it speaks to a truth deeper than fantasy. When reality starves us, we'll always dream in feast. The storm-lashed waters off the Cape of Good Hope have long been a graveyard for ships, but none haunt the waves quite like the spectral vessel known as the Flying Dutchman. Sailors from the 18th century onward told of a phantom brigantine with tattered sails glowing ghostly blue, forever doomed to tack against the wind without ever reaching port. According to legend, the ship's captain, sometimes named as the stubborn Dutchman Vanderdecken, cursed himself by swearing he'd round the Cape even if it took until Judgment Day. The heavens took him at his word, condemning him to an eternity sailing the same stretch of ocean, his crew reduced to skeletons, their voices carried on the gale as a harbinger of doom. Spotting the Dutchman was said to guarantee disaster, a fate so feared that British Royal Navy logs from the 19th century record sailors altering course to avoid its mist-wreathed silhouette. Yet beneath the supernatural terror lies a kernel of maritime truth. The Cape's churning waters, where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans collide, have claimed countless vessels through treacherous currents and sudden squalls. One likely inspiration was the real-life disappearance of the Dutch East India Company ship Batavia in 1629, wrecked on razor-sharp reefs during a mutiny so brutal it devolved into mass murder. Survivors' accounts of watching their ship break apart in the tempest could easily have warped into tales of a cursed vessel reappearing in the waves. And then there's the eerie optical phenomenon known as Fata Morgana, a mirage caused by temperature inversions that distorts distant ships into floating, elongated phantoms. Many a terrified sailor might have glimpsed a perfectly ordinary vessel refracted through this atmospheric lens, its mast stretched unnaturally skyward like a specter from the deep. The legend took an unexpected turn when German composer Richard Wagner seized upon it for his 1843 opera Der Fliegende Holländer. In his version, redemption replaces endless torment. The Dutchman's curse can be broken if he finds a woman willing to love him unto death. Wagner's brooding score, with its howling storm motifs and mournful sailors' choruses, transformed the tale from seafaring superstition into a metaphor for the restless human soul. The opera's staging often leans into the uncanny, with ghostly green lighting and ship rigging that seems to merge with the mist, leaving audiences unsure where the stage ends and the phantom begins. Science offers its own postscript to the myth. Marine biologists note that the Cape's waters teem with bioluminescent algae microorganisms that glow electric blue when disturbed by a ship's wake. A vessel passing through these blooms at night might appear to be wreathed in otherworldly light, its outline shimmering like a hallucination. Even the Dutchman's alleged appearances before shipwrecks could have roots in reality. The same atmospheric pressure drops that precede storms can cause haunting sound distortions, making faraway voices seem unnervingly close. The enduring power of the Flying Dutchman isn't just its spookiness, it's the way the story bends to fit our fears. To 18th century sailors, it embodied the terror of being forever lost. To Wagner, it became a romantic parable about longing and absolution. Today, it's a cultural touchstone, popping up everywhere from Pirates of the Caribbean to SpongeBob SquarePants. The real mystery isn't whether a ghost ship plagues the Cape, but why we keep seeing it century after century in the space between the waves and the gathering dark. In the moonlit valleys of Kauai, where breadfruit trees whisper secrets to the trade winds, locals still warn against angering the many-hued Hawaii's elusive little people, said to have built the island's most mysterious structures in a single night. These weren't the fairy-tale elves of European lore, standing no taller than a child's knee, with muscular frames burned copper by the tropical sun. The many-hewn worked with superhuman speed, passing stones hand to hand in torchlit chains to construct fish ponds, temples, and roads before dawn. When the first European missionaries arrived in the early 1800s, they were shown the many-hewn ditch on Kauai, a precision-cut aqueduct of fitted lava rock stretching nearly 300 yards, its joints so tight not a blade of grass could slip between. Islanders insisted no human hands built it. The missionaries scoffed until surveys proved the ditch predated Polynesian settlement by centuries, leaving a puzzle wrapped in palm fronds. Who crafted these marvels, and why did Hawaiians credit beings from another time? Dig deeper, and the many-hewn's origins twist like a path through volcanic fog. Their name might hold the first clue. Manahewn in Tahitian means lowly people, a possible reference to the island's earliest inhabitants displaced by later Polynesian migrations. Oral traditions describe them as shy forest dwellers, masterful engineers who fled to remote valleys when taller newcomers arrived, emerging only under darkness to work. Some anthropologists suggest they represent cultural memories of the Marquesans or other seafarers who reached Hawaii before the main Polynesian wave around 1200 CE. Others point to the striking parallels between many-hewn legends and the Patupea of Maori lore, pale-skinned, nocturnal forest spirits avoided by wise hunters. The structures attributed to them are anything but mythical. The Alikoko fish pond, a 70-acre brackish lagoon enclosed by a 900-foot lava rock wall, functions flawlessly even today, using tidal gates to trap fish while filtering sediment. Modern engineers confirm its design would require knowledge of hydraulics and astronomy. Then there's the Kikiaiola ditch, whose stones align with solstice sunrises, suggesting builders who understood celestial navigation long before European contact. The most haunting site is Necker Island, a barren rock northwest of Kauai, where archaeologists found 33 stone shrines and key carved figures resembling many-hewn descriptions, abandoned centuries before main Hawaiian settlement, their creators' identity lost to the waves. Colonialism tried to erase the many-hewn. 19th century scholars dismissed them as childish superstition, insisting Polynesians built all the island structures. But Hawaiian kupuna elders kept the stories alive in chants like the Kumulipo, which describes the many-hewn arriving when the earth was dark and shaping the land before gods or chiefs existed. Modern genetics add fuel to the mystery. Skeletal remains found in Kauai's Makawahi Cave show some of Hawaii's earliest inhabitants had distinctively small stature and cranial features unlike later Polynesians. Could these have been the real many-hewn, an advanced but marginalized people whose legacy was folded into myth after their disappearance? Today, the many-hewn straddle the line between legend and cultural reclamation. Construction crews in Hawaii still report tools going missing overnight, jokingly blaming the little people. Ecologists note that many many-hewn built fish ponds align with ancient fish spawning cycles, suggesting ecological wisdom preserved through oral tradition. And when the state attempted to bulldoze a many-hewn associated site for a hotel in the 1990s, protests led by native Hawaiian activists forced a redesign, proving that these fairy-tale beings still wield very real power. The deeper truth may be that the many-hewn were never just myth or history, but a living reminder. Sometimes the most improbable stories carry the sharpest truths about who gets to write the past and whose voices echo in the stones long after they're gone. Before the first Celts set foot on Irish soil, before the island's green hills bore the weight of history, 4 legendary cities stood cloaked in mist. These weren't just settlements, they were the crucibles of magic, the birthplaces of the Tuatha De Danann, Ireland's most enigmatic godlike race. The Liber Gabola Iren, an ancient manuscript known as the Book of Invasions, describes how this otherworldly people arrived from these hidden capitals, bringing with them treasures so potent they blurred the line between the divine and mortal worlds. First among them was Failures, where the Tuatha De Danann learned the secrets of stone and shadow. From here, they carried the Lia Fail, the stone of destiny, a monolith that would cry out under the feet of rightful Irish kings. Then came Gorias, where the Spear of Lug was forged, a weapon so thirsty for battle it roared with a mind of its own. In the flame-lit halls of Phineas, the sword of Nuada was tempered, its edge so sharp no armor could withstand it, while Murias, the City of Waters, gifted them the Cauldron of Dagda, a bottomless vessel that left no warrior unfed. These weren't just artifacts, they were extensions of the city's essence, embodiments of knowledge and power distilled into physical form. But where did these cities exist? The Irish texts offer tantalizing clues, directions to the north, beyond the waves, where the world grows misty and time bends. Some scholars argue these locations mirror real Bronze Age trade routes connecting Ireland to distant cultures. The speckled pottery and amber beads found in ancient Irish tombs suggest contact with Scandinavia, while the style of bronze weapons hints at Iberian craftsmanship. Could the 4 great cities have been poetic stand-ins for far-flung centers of learning, places like Mycenae with its cyclopean walls or the copper-rich Isles of Cyprus? Archaeology offers another thread to pull. The Hill of Tara, Ireland's sacred coronation site, aligns with the rising sun during key festivals, a feature shared with Failures' mythical Stone of Destiny. The coastal fortress of Dun Éan Hossa, perched on sheer cliffs in the Aran Islands, mirrors descriptions of Murias' watery defenses. Even more compelling are the Shia, the burial mounds dotting the countryside. These were believed to be portals to the Tuatha De Danann's hidden realms, their entrances guarded by shifting lights. Modern excavations reveal these mounds as Neolithic passage tombs like Newgrange, whose solar alignments suggest lost astronomical knowledge. Folklore refuses to let these cities fade. Fishermen still speak of seeing towers beneath the waves off Ireland's west coast, echoes of Murias swallowed by rising seas. In County Meath, locals warn against digging too deep near certain ring forts, lest one accidentally breach the walls of Phineas. These stories blur the line between memory and myth, suggesting that even as the Tuatha De Danann were demoted to fairies in later Christian retellings, their cities never truly vanished, they merely slipped beneath the surface, waiting for those willing to look beyond the scene. The genius of the 4 cities lies in their duality. On one hand, they represent a lost golden age of wisdom and craftsmanship. On the other, they're a reminder that every culture has its Atlantis, a homeland just out of reach, blurred by time but pulsing in the collective imagination. Whether these cities were real trading hubs, allegories for skill acquisition, or something far stranger, their legacy lingers, not just in Irish soil, but in the universal human yearning to uncover the places where legend and history collide. High above the swirling cosmic ocean of Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, where the stars themselves are but footprints of ancient sages, gleams an island untouched by time or suffering, Ashveta Dvipa, the White Island. Unlike earthly paradises hidden in jungles or beneath waves, this sanctuary floats in the celestial reaches of the Milky Way, bathed in the light of 1,000 suns. Ancient texts like the Mahabharata and Puranas describe it as the dwelling place of Vishnu in his form as the radiant Hayagriva, the horse-headed deity who guards the nectar of immortal wisdom. But Dvipa isn't just a divine retreat. It's the spiritual blueprint for yogic enlightenment, a realm where the boundaries between body, mind, and cosmos dissolve into pure luminosity. Venture deeper into these texts and the island's symbolism unfolds like a lotus. Its whiteness isn't just a color, it's the absence of impurity, the luminosity of consciousness itself. The Yoga Vasistha, a seminal Hindu philosophical text, compares Dvipa to the awakened mind, as the moon's reflection dances on water yet remains untouched by the waves, so the yogi abides in the world while anchored in that radiant isle. Buddhist tantras, meanwhile, identify it as a precursor to Sakhavati, the pure land of Amitabha Buddha, suggesting an astonishing cross-pollination of ideas along the Silk Road. Now consider the astronomy woven into the myth. The Bhagavata Purana locates Dvipa in the ocean of milk, a phrase that Hindu astronomers later linked to the Milky Way galaxy. Star charts from medieval India depict it near the constellation Sagittarius, where modern telescopes now reveal the galactic center, a region so dense with energy it bends spacetime. Coincidence? Perhaps not. Yogic traditions speak of the Sushumna Nadi, an energy channel aligned with the spine that mirrors the cosmic axis connecting Earth to Dvipa. When practitioners awaken Kundalini energy through meditation, they're said to ascend this inner Milky Way, reuniting individual consciousness with the divine source, a microcosm of the soul's journey to the White Island. The island's legacy pulses in unexpected places. Tibetan Buddhist mandalas with their concentric palaces of light echo Dvipa's description as a city of wisdom ringed by jeweled walls. Modern yogis still chant the Hayagriva Stotram, invoking the island's radiance to dissolve ignorance. Even the scientific quest for exoplanets orbiting distant stars carries a whisper of this ancient yearning, a search for pristine worlds untouched by the flaws of our own. What makes Dvipa timeless isn't its celestial coordinates, but its promise. That purity isn't a place, but a state of being. Whether envisioned as a glimmering dot in the cosmic ocean or the stillness within a meditator's breath, the White Island endures as a reminder. The greatest journeys aren't across seas or galaxies, but into the uncharted depths of consciousness itself. In the dimly lit Jewish quarter of 16th century Prague, where whispers of persecution hung thicker than river fog, one legend rose from the very earth to defend the innocent, the golem, a hulking figure of river clay brought to life by sacred words. At its heart stands Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel, a towering scholar and mystic who, according to folklore, molded the creature from the banks of the Vltava River, etching the Hebrew word emet, truth, into its forehead to animate it. By night, the golem patrolled the ghetto's narrow alleys, cracking the bones of those who would harm the Jewish community. By day, it was said to vanish into the attic of the old new synagogue, its massive body gathering dust until needed again. But this wasn't just a monster story. The golem embodied a profound tension between divine power and human responsibility, a theme that echoes unsettlingly in today's debates over artificial intelligence and the ethics of creation. The origins of the legend are steeped in historical persecution. Prague's Jewish community faced vicious pogroms under Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, accused of blood libel and sorcery. Rabbi Loew, a real historical figure renowned for his mastery of Kabbalah, became the perfect anchor for a myth of resistance. Jewish oral tradition paints the golem as a reluctant guardian, a being of pure obedience with no soul, capable of both protection and catastrophic violence. In some versions, the creature grows uncontrollable, destroying property until the rabbi removes the aleph from emet, leaving met dead and returning it to inert clay. This twist reveals the story's deeper warning: creation without wisdom breeds destruction. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the golem's shadow looms over Silicon Valley. Engineers training neural networks speak of the alignment problem, how to ensure AI systems act in humanity's best interest when their decision-making processes become opaque. Like Rabbi Lowe's Shem, the divine name placed in the golem's mouth to animate it, modern AI operates on code its creators don't always fully understand. The parallels are eerie. Both are entities built to serve, yet both harbor the potential to act in ways their makers never intended. When a chatbot generates harmful content or a facial recognition system displays racial bias, it's as if the Aleph has slipped from a Met all over again. Yet the golem myth offers more than just caution. It's a roadmap for ethical creation. Jewish commentaries emphasize that Rabbi Lowe didn't act alone. He consulted scholars, fasted, and waited for celestial signs before animating the clay. Compare this to today's tech giants racing to deploy AI with minimal oversight. The medieval legend even hints at a kill switch, the removal of the life-giving letter, a concept now debated as corrigibility in AI safety circles. Philosophers like Norbert Wiener, father of cybernetics, explicitly referenced the golem when warning about machines outpacing human control. Art and literature have long grappled with these themes. From Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a clear golem descendant, to Blade Runner's replicants, stories of artificial life force us to confront what we owe our creations and what they might owe us. Even the syntax of programming languages carries a Kabbalistic echo. Just as Hebrew letters held divine power for medieval Jews, modern coders believe precise sequences of symbols can breathe function into silicon. The golem's legacy isn't locked in Prog's attic. It walks among us every time we delegate decisions to algorithms or fear the tools we've built. Its lesson transcends clay and code. True creation demands humility. Not just the skill to animate, but the wisdom to know when to stop. Beneath the churning waves off Cornwall's rocky coast, where Atlantic storms claw at the cliffs of Land's End, lies a kingdom swallowed by the sea lioness. This wasn't just any lost land, but the very realm of Tristan, the tragic knight whose love story rivaled even Lancelot and Guinevere's. According to Arthurian lore, Lyoness was a fertile plain stretching beyond the Isles of Scilly, its fields rich with wheat and its halls echoing with harp songs until a single cataclysmic night when the ocean roared in, drowning everything but its legends. What's chilling isn't just the tale's romance, but the scientific whispers that suggest it might be rooted in truth. Geologists have uncovered a submerged forest off the coast of Cornwall, its gnarled oak stumps preserved in peat beneath the seabed, carbon dated to around 3,000 years ago. These ancient trees, visible at low tide near Mounts Bay, stand as silent witnesses to a time when sea levels were lower and what's now ocean floor was lush, habitable land. Even more compelling are the medieval chronicles of fishermen who claim to pull up roof tiles and cobblestones in their nets near the Seven Stones Reef, where a treacherous cluster of rocks marks the spot locals call the city, a possible reference to Lyoness's drowned capital. But Lyoness's ties to Tristan weave the myth deeper into Arthurian tapestry. In Gottfried von Strasberg's medieval romance, Tristan isn't just a knight of Cornwall. He's the heir to Lyoness, his backstory steeped in the kingdom's tragic fate. When the sea devoured his homeland, survivors fled to Cornwall, embedding Lyoness's memory into local lore. The parallels to real geological events are uncanny. Around the same period when Tristan's legend took shape, the North Sea's Storegga slide triggered tsunamis that devastated coastal settlements across Britain. Could Lyoness be a folk memory of such a disaster, its Arthurian glamour draped over a very real trauma? Cornwall's landscape itself seems to hum with the legend. The eerie chimes of bells heard beneath the waves near Sennen Cove, said to be those of Lyoness's drowned churches, mirror Celtic myths of sunken cities whose sacred sounds linger as warnings. Even the name Lyoness might derive from the old Cornish lethau, so meaning Lion's Rock, hinting at a pre-Arthurian origin tied to local landmarks. Modern sonar scans reveal underwater ridges near the Scilly Isles that could be the remnants of field boundaries or roads, their grids too regular to be natural formations. The genius of Lyoness lies in its duality. For Arthurian enthusiasts, it's a romantic extension of Camelot's mythos, a kingdom lost to the same tide of time that eventually swept away Arthur himself. For historians, it's a tantalizing case study in how oral traditions preserve geological truths. And for the Cornish people, it's neither fully history nor pure fantasy, but a living story woven into place names, fishing superstitions, and the unsettling knowledge that the ground beneath their feet was once, and may yet again be reclaimed by the sea. Every storm that batters Cornwall's coast doesn't just erode cliffs, it whispers the old warning that Lyoness's fate could one day be our own. West of Ireland's stormy cliffs, where the Atlantic's grey waves swallow horizons whole, sailors swore for centuries they'd glimpsed it Hyperborea, a mist-wrapped island that appeared once every 7 years, its shores veiled in fog save for that single radiant day when the clouds parted to reveal emerald hills and a single perfect city. Unlike other phantom islands scribbled onto medieval maps, Hyperborea wasn't just a navigational error. It was a spectral obsession, appearing so consistently in charts from 1325 onward that even the pragmatic Venetian cartographer Andrea Bianco etched it onto vellum with a note: "Here lies the island no man can reach." The name itself whispers of myth and misadventure, Brassil, likely deriving from the Gaelic Ui Bresail, meaning descendants of Bres, an ancient Irish king linked to prosperity. By the 1500s, the island had morphed in European imagination into a Celtic Eden, where monks preserved forgotten Christian relics or where advanced civilization thrived in isolation. Some swore its circular shape, drawn on maps with a river bisecting it like a pupil, matched Plato's descriptions of Atlantis. Others claimed it was the last fragment of a sunken continent, peaking above the waves on a celestial schedule. The Portuguese, ever eager to outmaneuver Spain in Atlantic exploration, launched multiple expeditions, including one by the navigator João Vaz Corte Real in 1472, who returned with wild tales of dense forests and strange carvings, but no coordinates future sailors could replicate. What makes Hyperborea extraordinary isn't just its persistence on maps, but the eerie natural phenomena that might have birthed it. The waters west of Ireland are a stage for nature's cruelest illusions. Fata Morgana mirages caused by thermal inversions bending light can distort distant icebergs or even the cliffs of the Azores into floating cities. The Porcupine Bank, a shallow submarine plateau rising abruptly from the Atlantic depths, occasionally churns up peat and bog wood from ancient landscapes submerged after the Ice Age, littering beaches with debris that could fuel fantasies of a drowned civilization. Even the island's famed 7-year cycle aligns with rare atmospheric conditions where Gulf Stream currents temporarily shift, parting fog banks in uncanny synchrony. Yet Hyperborea's grip on humanity goes deeper than optical tricks. It's a mirror for our longing to believe the ocean still holds secrets. When the notorious pirate Captain John Nutt claimed to have stranded there in 1625, describing black rabbits and a sorcerer king, his ravings were dismissed until scholars recognized his details matched Irish folklore of Tech Duin, the House of Don, a pagan afterlife for sailors. Modern sonar has since revealed the Porcupine Bank's sunken river valleys, proof that people once walked there when seas were lower. The line between myth and memory blurs. Was Hyperborea always a mirage, or did it vanish because we stopped believing? The island's final appearance on an Admiralty chart in 1872 came with a sardonic note: existence highly doubtful. Yet even today, fishermen off Galway swear they've seen the haze-shrouded outline on the horizon, gone by the time they turn the bow. Hyperborea endures not because it fooled cartographers, but because it represents the last unspoiled mystery, a place that exists most vividly in the act of searching. Every wave that hides it whispers the same tantalizing lie: look again. From the drowned spires of Lyoness to the celestial glow of Ashveta Divipa, these 35 myths reveal something extraordinary, not just about the worlds we've imagined, but about the minds that built them. Every culture in every corner of history has conjured gateways to realms beyond the mundane, whether hidden behind mist beneath waves or woven into the stars. And here's the breathtaking truth: these stories aren't mere escapism, they're mirrors. The many-hues engineering brilliance reflects indigenous Hawaiians' reverence for sustainable land use. The golem's looming shadow warns of creations outpacing their creators, a lesson Silicon Valley is learning in real time. Even High Brassel's elusive shores speak to something primal in us all, the refusal to accept that every corner of the map has been filled in. What unites these legends, despite oceans and centuries between them? A shared human impulse to explain the unexplainable. When volcanoes erupted without warning, the Maori spoke of Uamoko stirring in his subterranean cradle. When sailors vanished in the Cape of Good Hope's tempests, they became passengers on the Flying Dutchman's ghostly deck. These myths transformed chaos into narrative, offering not just answers but meaning. And the most fascinating part, many hold kernels of truth, Plato's Atlantis echoing Santorini's cataclysm, or the rainbow serpent's movements mirroring Australia's flood cycles. Our ancestors weren't just spinning tales, they were encoding survival lessons in allegory, wrapping seismic shifts and climatic disasters in the glittering cloak of story. But magical realms serve another, deeper purpose. They challenge power. Kokaine's lazy rivers mocked medieval feudalism's backbreaking labor. The Peach Blossom Springs hidden village rejected imperial bureaucracy for communal harmony. Even Avalon, where wounded Arthur retreated, whispered that kings aren't immortal, just men in need of healing. These weren't just fantasies, they were acts of resistance, proving that imagination is the ultimate sanctuary when the world grows oppressive. So what's your mythical realm, the one that lingers in your daydreams or chills your spine when the fog rolls in? Share it below, because every legend thrives when passed between voices. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's enigmas, don't forget to subscribe. The next mystery is already unraveling, and you won't want to miss where it leads. After all, as these myths remind us, the most magical discoveries often begin with a single, whispered, "What if?"